Hello, everybody. So I'm going to I'm going to attempt or try to explain life. I wrote down a couple points, and this may be influenced by how I've been feeling lately, my own frame of reference, my perceptions, right? So the first point is that there is work, right? And I think this is something that I've always known, right? I think maybe not always. Like when I was a kid, I may have been more like fun. Like I would have been thinking of playing video games and hanging out with friends. But eventually, once you get to the adult stage, I mean, because everything under 18, we can just leave to, you being with your parents and having basically everything given to you, right? Unless you have hard circumstances, then you would start off with there is work. But we can say at before the first point, 0 point would be you're basically a child, right? And you get raised or you are being raised by your guardians, by your parents, by whoever. But eventually you have to work, right? And then the work, I view it as you can view work in two ways: work first or work later, right? Let's go with the one that I think is like that is actually trying to get promoted nowadays. Work later means I'll have fun today, right? And I'll worry about, and by work, I mean everything that you have to do that you don't want to do, right? Responsibilities from getting up in the morning, paying bills, getting food, eating, sleeping, everything, everything you don't want to do. So you can put that off for later, right? Like I'll sleep later, I'll eat later, I'll work later, I'll exercise later, I'll like whatever, all of these things that you need to do, you can put them off and have fun first, right? Like continue to be a kid, right? But if you do that, eventually you're gonna have to do them later, right? And you're not going to want to do them. That's the thing, right? It's not like you have fun and then a person is rational enough to say, okay, I had my fun, I had my days, my hours of fun, and now I'm off to work happily. No, it's like you get dragged into it. You get consequences. You only do it until it's absolutely necessary, right? You procrastinate. That's basically procrastination, right? The other side of the coin is work first. Work first means that you do the work and then later you relax, right? Again, you get up, you do exercise, you go to work, you do your responsibilities, pay your bills on time, things like that first, and then later you do leisure activities. The problem with this, because there's also a problem with work first, there's always a disadvantage to everything, is that if you do this long enough, you'll become a type A personality, which is you'll become neurotic, anxious, and you won't be able to really relax, right? Because you'll be so into the work rhythm, right? Like I need to get these things done. I need to do this. I need to do that. That it's like, oh, it's 10 o'clock at night and I didn't even get to relax or rest. And then the next day, same thing, right? Um, so that's the disadvantage or the downside to always having work first, right? So you kind of need like a balance. But the thing here, we can put work not later or first, maybe midway, right? And kind of like balance it out, or sometimes first, sometimes later, right? I don't know. We can like work or play around with that a little bit. But the thing there is that there's always work, right? That's the first thing, from taking a shower, like I said, to eating, to shaving, to getting a haircut, right? Which I haven't because I'm going to let my hair grow out. Things like that, right? It's just like all that is work. So that's the first thing. Two, there is suffering. Again, this is kind of like a downer. Um, Suffering is actually what makes you have work, and suffering comes in many forms, right? Suffering from being hungry to being too hot to being too cold to being dizzy to being to having anxiety to having fear to being worried to being bored, right? If you're too how can I say it, if you're like a work later person, right, and you're always enjoying yourself, you that's a disadvantage. You could get bored. like there's nothing to do right now, depression, um, like you can't get away from suffering. As long as you're alive, you're gonna suffer because you have a body, right? And your body is vulnerable, it has limitations, it has needs, right? From needing to go to the bathroom to like all of the physiological needs, right? So all of that causes suffering, which then needs to be regulated, or how can I say it? Like not eliminated, but it has to be met. It has to be taken care of, right? And that's where the work comes in, right? So there's like it's like kind of like a chain event thing, right? Like there's suffering and there's work. Um, Third, there's uncertainty, right? And now for these last three, well, these first three, we can say, but there's also the opposite. Sure. But if you say there is leisure instead of work, there is pleasure instead of suffering, and there is certainty instead of uncertainty, I would say, again, that's when you're a kid, right? That's when you are relaxing. That's when you have parents. That's when you have stability. That's when you're, like worry free, right? But I would say for most adults, there's these three things, right? Uncertainty means, first of all, like not knowing like where you're going to be in 5 years, right? um because of different things, right? There's this very interesting question which people always ask, like, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And I was like, just recently asked that question, and I was like, bro, I have no idea. Like, I hope I'm better than I'm now, right? But we don't know, right? Probably just the same. There's uncertainty in the market, prices, inflation, taxes. There's uncertainty in wages, in where you're going to be working, right? Like, and I think there's more uncertainty nowadays than there was in the past, or maybe like 50, 70 years ago, because before people could have a job, land a good job, and just stay at that job until they retired or died or whatever. Nowadays, you're jumping from job to job trying to figure out like which is better, which gives you more money, which sucks less, right? So there's a lot of uncertainty, labor wise, economically, right? And then there's uncertainty in social relationships, right? Like with your friends, with your family, with trust, right? They say that that's actually, with so much information, or in the age or the era of information, they say that trust is going to become like one of the most limited things around, because people aren't going to trust anything or anybody, right? Because anybody and anything can, or anybody can just say anything, right? And put out anything, and people are going to be like very distrustful, right? So distrust creates or generates uncertainty, right? Like you're not sure who to trust, you're not sure what to do, you're not sure, this job tells you like, come work for us and we'll pay you well, and and then you leave this other job, but it's uncertain. What if you're leaving something more or less certain for something that's not good, right? Or that's like 100% uncertain. um so let's go with four. People show and tell you about their highlights, but most don't think. I don't, because I wrote this last week, I don't remember what I meant by that. But when I say people show and tell you about their highlights, I'm talking maybe like about social media, or when they tell you like what's going on in their lives, they'll tell you like the main things and the things that are like positive, right? But most don't think means basically that most people aren't actively, cognitively or mentally engaged with you in a conversation, or aren't really like thinking for themselves, right? They just repeat the same pattern of mental processes and language which is already established for them, right? Like they're afraid to think outside the box and become risk takers, right? Even in like small things like a conversation with you, right? They won't crack jokes that they know haven't worked in other places, or maybe um, they haven't tried in other places, right? They'll probably just tell you jokes that they've heard from other people that have been funny, and things like that, little things like that. That's what I mean by most don't think. Now, fifth point is, not thinking is not necessarily bad. It can actually be the optimal position and state, right? Like just kind of letting yourself flow, right? Like flow with the wind, flow with the wave, flow. Just, like a leaf, right? Like the wind takes me here, now it takes me there. This is trending, now that is trending. I like this, now I like that. I do what everybody's doing, right? And that could be potentially the best state because it could make you the happiest, right? Instead of being a critic and analyzing everything, right? So not thinking is not necessarily bad. It could actually be a good thing, and it can actually be the optimal state because socially you're included, and if you're included socially, you have opportunities, right? That's the thing they don't tell you at school. Opportunities aren't just like they're there or they're not there. Opportunities come from being in social groups, right? So as long as you're in social groups, you'll have opportunities. If you're outside or have very limited social groups, you won't have that many opportunities, right? So it's not actually like study and make an effort and work hard. It's actually like become a social butterfly almost, right? There are doers and thinkers. This is the sixth point, which this goes back to a theory of mine. So there are thinkers, there are people that will want to think about things, right? And won't want to do things physically, right? If you tell a thinker like fix a bike or change the power socket on the wall, they'll probably say like, okay, like I'll try it, or I'll go about it enthusiastically with a learning mind state, but I won't know what the hell I'm doing, right? I'll need help and I won't really enjoy it, right? And vice versa. There are people that you're just like almost like a robot, right? Like you're like, hey, I need to do this, and they just get up and do it, right? They are doers. They're very good at doing things. And by not being thinkers, it doesn't mean that they're not smart. They could be highly capable and highly smart. It's just that they rather not be thinking about like philosophy or reflecting. Like it's just like, tell me what to do and teach me, and I'll do it just like it or even better or whatever. And that's just it, right? Like they just want to do stuff, right? Think of construction workers versus like lawyers or psychologists, right? Seventh point, you are where you are, not so much by merit, but by contacts and connections. That's the last point, which again makes reference to this idea that um, like you won't really go out of your way to find what you really want to do or what you maybe don't even know you like to do. You will only operate within your proximity, within your own social circle, right? Within what's close to you, right? You won't go beyond that. So you'll go to the nearest college, you'll work where people, again, connections will orient you towards, right? And you may choose among those options, but you're limited, or you limit yourself naturally to those options, because really going out somewhere new would be like, and I think there are people that do that and good for them, but it would mean being somewhere where you don't even know anybody, right? Because I think about like people that travel and they're like, oh yeah, like I have a friend in Italy, and I just, I'm staying with my friend in Italy. Then I go to Istanbul and I have a friend there, and it's like you're not really like seeing some, like just go to a random ass city in a random country and just figure it out, right? Like, not even that would be truly original and like independent, right? But if you're always like, like I landed this nice job, but like I didn't do it, it was like from a friend of a friend, things like that, right? So again, that comes naturally. Most people are just where they are where they are because that's like what was available to them to a certain extent. So it's not so much merit. It's not even that you're good at that. It's just that you were there, right? And you were available, and that job was available. And that's the opportunity I was making reference to earlier, right? Again, by contacts and connections. So I think this is where we're going to leave off. And I'll see you guys in the next one, okay? Peace.